Welcome in. Happy Monday. It's Golic and Golic, Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr. back for another great week here. We have an awesome day coming up. Joe Thomas going to join us in a little bit to talk about the record-breaking performance from Myles Garrett and the move from the Cleveland Browns to fire their head coach, Ralph Russo. Going to stop by and talk a little college football as the college football crowd got their wish. You've got a bit of a free agent period going on right now and a lot of movement among the big-time quarterbacks in the sport. We may even find time to get to ho-hum, game 272 from last night, the banger that you and Ryan Radke got to call on radio on Sunday Night Football as the AFC North got decided. But we know today in the NFL is Black Monday, a day where you're going to see a lot of decisions made about the futures of coaches, GMs, personnel, many of which we've already seen right now. So we always kind of put the caveat out there, Dad, it's a fun day. No one likes to see anyone lose their job. It's sort of like cut down day at the end of training camp, but for the coaching version. But you got to talk about the decisions, and certainly there's a lot to discuss today.
Yeah, there is. I mean, this is what is it, usually between 4 and 7 head coaches a year, and we're at 6 openings right now, 2 that were during the season and 4 new ones that if you haven't heard, we'll let you know them in a second here. So. And I think when we get into it, I think only one of the coaches fired will actually be a head coach next year. I think you'll see a new batch of coordinators or possibly some retreads coming back.
Yep. And so to get to that point, let's get you caught up on the moves that have been made so far this morning around the NFL. The Atlanta Falcons late last night actually made the move to fire Raheem Morris. He was 8-9 in both of his seasons as the head coach of the Falcons and got hot at the end of this year. Had some people wondering about the future. Won the final 4 games of this season despite being eliminated from the postseason back in early December. The Browns fired Kevin Stefanski, the 2-time coach of the year. He was one of 13 coaches to win coach of the year multiple times going back a while here. 45-56 in his 6 seasons as the Brown head coach, one of 3 Browns coaches to have 100 games coached in his career. Pete Carroll, the longtime veteran, both college and pro, goes one and done with the Las Vegas Raiders. The 74-year-old became the oldest head coach in NFL history and went 3-14 in his lone season with the team ranking last in points per game and yards per game offensively. And Jonathan Gannon was the latest move made. The Arizona Cardinals fired their head coach this season. He had placed 32 players on IR this season, most in the NFL. The Cardinals had at least 13 losses in 3 of the last 4 seasons, 2 of which came with Jonathan Gannon at the helm of head coach. So different reasons for all of them there, Dad. Certainly different individual issues for each team we can get into. But you mentioned one of these coaches you think will be coaching again next year. Who will it be?
Yeah, and let's remind people of the other 2 that were let go during the season to make it the full 6 openings. Brian Daboll of the Giants and Brian Callahan of the Tennessee Titans. He was the first one let go during the season. So there are 6 vacancies out there, and I think the only coach that will resurface next year will be Kevin Stefanski. From the Cleveland Browns. I thought he was going to get fired. That organization is a mess. He dealt alone in his 6 years with 13 different quarterbacks. We know the number of quarterbacks they've dealt with over the last couple decades has been ridiculous. Joe Thomas will be on later. We've already talked about that with him, so he'll have to relive that horror again. So I do think Stefanski will wind up with right now the Giants, Tennessee, Arizona, Atlanta, or Vegas. The other coaches,
he's got to be relieved, right? By the way,
yeah. Oh, I think so. I think so. I think Pete Carroll will be done coaching, and then Raheem Morris, Gannon, Callahan, and Daboll will go back and be coordinators somewhere. Maybe head coaches again down the road. This is just my opinion. I have nothing to base it on. Just looking at the jobs that are out there and the coaches. So that's what I think is going to happen. What's interesting, in the 4 firings that just happened, only one GM was let go, Terry Fontenot of the Atlanta Falcons. All the other GMs were kept. We also have Chris Greer, the GM of the Miami Dolphins, was let go as well. But a lot of times you'll see that in pairs, right? The coach and GM let go, especially when you're going to start with a new quarterback. Like Arizona will probably start with a new quarterback. Vegas will probably will definitely start with a new quarterback. Cleveland, they have decisions to make. They have 2 young quarterbacks, or do they start with a new quarterback? But a lot of times you see GM and coach showing the door together.
Yeah, the Brown situation, I don't understand at all. The common refrain I've heard from fans and other people following it is the Browns are cheap and they don't want to have to pay a new head coach and a new GM, even though Andrew Berry, and this is the tough part from the outside for us, right? We'll never know specifically who had as much of a say in what decision as everyone else, right? But the decision to move on from Baker Mayfield and to then make Deshaun Watson the highest paid quarterback in NFL history, and the disaster that ensued for them from a PR standpoint on the field and production, it seems like something everyone should have to wear. And to your point, going forward from here at the juncture you're at with the Cleveland Browns, with all the draft capital we've talked about for next year, with the decision you've got to make a quarterback, that seems like something you'd want everyone aligned on and linked to going forward. And right now it seems like Andrew Berry's the one that's kind of been absolved of any of the blame in this, in a way that from the outside looking in doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, listen, there's a number of coaches and GMs who are responsible for the tens of quarterbacks that the Browns have gone through. But Andrew Berry is culpable in some of those as well, since he's the latest GM. So, yeah, I'm surprised that he got the pass as well, quite honestly. But all these GMs, it doesn't matter what we think, they're going to be there. They're going to be the part of the searches for the new coaches. We know that Troy Aikman was brought into the Miami, which that's, I think, an interesting move to help with the new GM. And I wonder, too, are we done with head coaches being fired? It usually does happen pretty quickly because you don't want to be a team that can't go look for another head coach because you have a head coach still. So normally, I mean, you should know when the season is over whether you're going to retain your coach or not.
Agreed. So again, with 6 openings, the announcement from the Colts that Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard are going to be back there, and the nod for Duke Tobin and Zach Taylor in Cincinnati that brain trust is also going to survive this season, probably leaves us maybe only looking at Mike McDaniel in Miami, and if anything could happen there, as he was the other hot seat candidate off talked about. So we'll get into the specifics of some of those and how they're going to get picked coming up in a little bit here. Some people that will play a role in that as well. Cough, cough, Tom Brady. But I don't want to shortchange just because we did have game 272 last night, Sunday Night Football, the AFC North on the line, and boy, did it deliver. The AFC North of it all gave way to 3 quarters of close football. The fourth quarter, an absolute heater. This on 3rd and 1, the touchdown pass from Lamar Jackson to put the Ravens up with Zay Flowers going the distance, busted coverage in the back end. The Steelers respond. Chidobe Awuzie, the field at Acrisure gives way to the Calvin Austin, the 3rd touchdown pass from Aaron Rodgers. But oh no, Chris Boswell missed field goal on the extra point. So only up 2 in this game, which leaves it wide open for the Ravens to drive down. This, a 4th down conversion from Lamar Jackson, one of a few big throws at the end of the game. This to Isaiah Likely to set up the rookie Tyler Loop on the field goal try, and wide right here. Unbelievable devastation. The wailing and gnashing of teeth ensues as the Baltimore Ravens are sent home. This, the reaction from both quarterbacks and rookie kicker Tyler Lewis.
And that's what you want. You want the ball in your hands with 2:20 left and you need a touchdown. That's exactly what you want. And I was calm all day long, you know, with the gravity of the game and knowing what was in store for us. But I was confident that I was going to play a good game and that I could kind of be the magnetic force out there to keep guys confident and calm. And even that 2-minute, I was like, yeah, you know, we're good. We're going to go down and score, and don't worry about it, boys. But I think that's part of it, being the old guy, having a lot of gray in your beard, is they expect things from you, and it's nice to be able to deliver in moments like that.
Like we did all that, man, to come up short, bro, you know? Devastating, furious, all type of, I don't know, I'm everywhere with it right now.
Just for a time like that sucks, and you know, I want to do better, and unfortunately the nature of the job is, you know, you have makes and those are awesome, and then unfortunately you have misses, and for that, you know, for that to happen tonight sucks.
So lots to unpack in this sound here. I want to start with the victors, and can I just say, Dad, when it comes to Aaron Rodgers talking about his calm demeanor, can you really say that with when about 4 minutes left? We saw Aaron Rodgers lose his ever-loving mind. The helmet comms in his helmet went out. He rejected the armband from his backup. He got a different helmet with a comm system that forced them to burn not one but 2 timeouts, leaving them with none with under 4 minutes left of the game. Aaron Rodgers did not seem to be the picture of calm in that moment. He may have been down the stretch, but we do have to acknowledge that happened.
He was losing his mind. Mason Rudolph came on to throw him an armband, and he threw it back off. He changed helmets with the communication system. Arthur Smith ran out one time and yelled the play to him. Yeah, he was not happy about it. He certainly lets his feelings be known. But we showed in the highlights there two plays. One, a broken coverage for Zay Flowers getting the touchdown early, and then Calvin Austin with Chidobe Awuzie slipping on the turf there, and he's wide open for a touchdown. This was a 10-3 rock fight at halftime, and I thought it was going to be a rock fight the whole game. At halftime, Derrick Henry had 112 yards, and you thought, I mean, in the wild card game last year against Pittsburgh, he ran for 186 yards. So he had 112 at halftime, ended up with 126 for the game. Pittsburgh just loaded the box on him, would not give him an inch in the second half. And the one thing that was missing, but we showed 2 of them during the highlights, was plays downfield. They were far and few between. It's just not Pittsburgh's MO without DK Metcalf. Now they'll get him back because he could catch a short pass, turn it into a long pass, or he could stretch a defense and make them back off to open up other things for receivers. But they didn't have him the last 2 games. So you wondered who was going to step up. And in the second half, the ball started going downfield a little more. The pass that Lamar Jackson had to Isaiah Likely was beautiful. Over Highsmith's head, the linebacker, and underneath Ramsey, who I thought was going to pick that thing off. What a game. And for those that are saying that last play that Baltimore should have run another play to try and make the field goal shorter, and the refrain was, give it to Derrick Henry. He was averaging 6 yards a carry. Well, no, he wasn't. Maybe in the first half he was averaging way more than that, but in the second half he was barely averaging 2 yards a carry. They were loading the box to stop him. He was only going to get a couple of yards. Tyler Loop was 28 of 28 from inside of 50 for the year. He was 7 of 7 from 40 for 49 for the year. That was makeable. That was in his range, and you only would have got maybe a couple of more yards if you ran Derrick Henry. And you and I were talking before the show, Mike, and you mentioned Derrick Henry fumbled a couple of times, and you certainly don't want that at that point. So I had no problem with the way they ended the game, but it turned out to be a 10-3 rock fight at halftime to a second half of 23-14. Pittsburgh outscored Baltimore. What a game.
We were assured that no matter what at the end, after the Boswell missed extra point, that a kicker was going to ruin one fan base's life based on the outcome. And this, our researcher, Daniel Greco, courtesy of OptaStats, pointed this out. There have been over 60,000 field goal attempts in NFL history. Tyler Loop's miss on Sunday night is the only one of those attempts that came as time expired in the fourth quarter of the final week, with both teams' playoff hopes resting solely on the result of that kick. So I feel for the young man, right? You mentioned all that.
Yeah.
He's a rookie in the most high-pressure situation ever concocted for a kicker based on that stat right there. At the same time, I only feel so much because while no one moment wins or loses the game, kickers are the only ones actively not shorting their lives out on the field by going and putting their body through hell. You get to walk away whole, and you've got a job that's different from everybody else. But you feel for the guy. Ravens fans, please don't do anything extreme or weird to him. He's going through enough. He's going to hate it enough there. Like that's the ugliness that goes along with this that I hate. Yeah. Can I say one other thing, though, if we're talking about the blame game for people? Y'all can't put this on Lamar Jackson. Like, that stuff down the stretch in the second half for him was vintage Lamar. Some of the downfield stuff, the pocket work, at times dodging multiple bodies in the pocket, bouncing off dudes and making incredible throws downfield. I thought he stepped up in the biggest moments in the way that we always demand of him, and a way that makes the conversation for them complicated going forward. We know Lamar got asked about John Harbaugh's status coming back next year after the game. He kind of pushed it aside, saying he was still processing this moment. But how much of that did you feel the weight of in this broadcast, that it was a loser leaves town match for whichever coach lost?
I'll give my prediction on both coaches and both quarterbacks. But as far as Lamar, you're right. But you know what's put on Lamar, right? Because of the money he makes. He's a two-time MVP. And there have been 11 multi-winning MVPs in the league. And Lamar's the only one that has not been to a Super Bowl. So he's going to feel that pressure until he takes the team that far. But he has a $75 million cap hit next year that they're going to have to redo and rework. Here's my prediction. Nothing changes for either team, coach or quarterback. I think Harbaugh's back. Now, Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh, they've lost 6 straight playoff games. Let's see. And they have Houston coming to town, an unbelievable defense. They better hope for a friggin' blizzard, quite honestly, and there's not going to be one. But I think Tomlin's back. I think Harbaugh's back. I think Lamar's back. And I think Aaron Rodgers is coming back. I think he had fun in Pittsburgh. He and Tomlin get along well. And so I do think he's going to come back for the next year. So I think it all remains the same for next year with coach and quarterback for both teams.
I agree with that on the Baltimore side. I think a lot of the reporting about Lamar behind the scenes and who he is as a teammate, I don't know the truth of that or not. I've heard mixed things about the reporter behind that. But all I know is the quarterback, Lamar Jackson, means you put up with it. When he's healthy and on the field, and health was an issue for them in a lot of ways this year, including this game where, oh, by the way, probably one of the more under-talked about moments, Kyle Hamilton leaves in the first half with a concussion and doesn't come back. The Ravens already bad pass defense got worse, and their tackling in the second half was abysmal. Not a banner rushing night for the Steelers, but Jalen Warren, some tough yards down the front. So that's all mixed in there. Dad, for the Steelers, I think this is more complicated. Them, like you said, with the opportunity against Houston. Do you think they have the ability to win a game like that in the postseason with this roster? And how does that impact the way that you see that picture coming back of them wanting to run it back with Aaron Rodgers?
I think it's going to be difficult. Because I think right now the weather's supposed to be in the 30s and clear. So, and you're getting a dome team in Houston. Mike, Houston and Seattle have the 2 best defenses in the league. They're devastating defenses. Devastating. But now I'll say on the other side that the Houston offense can be inconsistent. And Pittsburgh defense against the run definitely stepped up in the second half to help stop Derrick Henry, but I don't foresee a great outcome for Pittsburgh against Houston. I think Houston's defense is too good. Baltimore's defense is not Houston's defense. And you're right. When Kyle Hamilton went out, and it was his own collision with Alohi Gilman, his former teammate at Notre Dame together, now teammates in Baltimore, knocked him out of the game. That really changed the defense for him. But no, I think it's going to be tough for Pittsburgh, but here's why I think Aaron Rodgers is back, Mike. This quarterback draft is not what it was hopped up to be before the season. Pittsburgh is not going to pick early in this draft, so they're not going to get a big-time quarterback in the first round of this draft. So who are you going to get? Are you going to try and trade for someone? Are you going to sign a free agent? I would let Aaron quarterback another year until you have a quarterback ready.
And I just don't understand how any of that meaningfully changes next year if you keep doing this. This is why Pittsburgh fans feel like they're going insane, because this is fun and feels good until you lose next weekend on Wild Card Weekend and are staring there without any clear map to your future, and round we go. Plenty more time to get into that. Let's put a bow in it, because now that you mentioned that, we have the playoffs set. We can look ahead to a completed bracket, our pair of 1 seeds, and who we have more confidence in getting set to do this dance for real in the knockout rounds coming up on Wild Card Weekend. And in college football, we mentioned you got your free agency period. Why the rich are already getting richer even in the midst of a great playoff run. That's next here on Golic and Golic. Welcome back and Happy New Year from Golic and Golic. It's been a busy portal season already in college football as free agency at large has resumed, and big news for Texas Tech, fresh off getting bounced from the college football playoff. They land their quarterback of the future in former Cincinnati Bearcat, former IU Hoosier, Brendan Sorsby commits to Texas Tech. And Dad, as we have a number of names coming off the board right now, This was one of the most important ones to keep an eye on. Everyone saw the great defense that Texas Tech spent all that money on and an offense that fell short. And so if the charge was go out and find a quarterback that could be an improvement on Baron Morton, I believe the Red Raiders should be excited about this. And I think that checks that box in a big way that might be the tune of reportedly around $5 million, which is incredible.
How about it? Yeah, that is. And think about it. Sorsby was at Indiana for 2 years.
Yeah.
If he'd have maybe hung around there, who knows? You don't know. Quarterbacks are moving all the time.
Exactly.
But he was at Indiana before Cincinnati. Good sized kid too, 6'3", 235, 240. So yeah, certainly one of the big moves in the quarterback position.
Big thing for him, great runner. Like, he's going to be a plus runner in a way that's going to add an element I think they need. I think a more accurate passer despite the percentage number there. And one of many on the move, Sam Leavitt, the former Arizona State quarterback, reportedly linked to Kentucky, and Will Stein's staff there. And the Indiana Hoosiers, man, are on a run. Josh Hoover, the former TCU quarterback, reportedly committed to Indiana, going to replace the departing Heisman Trophy winner Fernando Mendoza, as I think one of the better signal callers in this one. You see along with there, Nick Marsh, the great wide receiver that was a prize portal collection from MSU, also picked up by them. This is what happens, Dad. Winning begets winning. And for Kurt Cignetti and company, who signed a modest high school recruiting class, I think ranked around 33rd, the portal is where they've continued to make their hay, and it's what's gotten them to this point. And they got another great one, I think, in Hoover coming to campus.
Yeah, they definitely do. A couple of quarterbacks are still waiting to see where they go. Dylan Raiola, DJ Lagaway, Raiola at Nebraska, Lagaway, Florida, and Drew, Mustamaker went from North Texas to Oklahoma State. What a story he is. Led the nation in passing, was unbelievable this year. He was a guy, the only year he started at quarterback in high school was his freshman year on the B team. He played varsity football. He was a DB and a punter. Didn't make his bones till the bowl game last year, and then had a monster year this year with over 4,300 yards. I'm interested to see what he does. He's another good-sized kid at 6'4", about 210, 215.
Put up some video game numbers, and kind of like the trend that we see around the sport, going to follow his head coach to his new destination. Eric Morris goes from North Texas to Oklahoma State, succeeds Mike Gundy there, and brings his quarterback along with him to try and help jumpstart it. So it's kind of what everyone's looking for right now as they go ahead and try and do college football's version of free agency. And again, we heard the complaint from everyone last year, right? The portal opened up right at the beginning of the playoff. Everyone said the NFL would never have free agency in the middle of the postseason. And so it's still technically in the middle of the postseason, but in a nice lull in the action here, at least from a news standpoint. And so now college football is getting a little bit more of what it wanted, the attention for this period of roster construction that we're all still kind of getting used to there. So it's been a fun one. We'll keep you updated on more of them that come. Stan Verrett will keep you updated on everything you need to know on Countdown Live, presented by Prime. It follows us right here on FanDuel Sports Network. Going to get you ready for the night of action here on the network, from the NBA to the NHL, all the news, notes, and some great guests to help you guys get ready to go. So don't miss it. Stick around here. It's good stuff. Coming up next, though, great stuff from Myles Garrett this weekend. History made. We'll talk to another former Browns great about his place all time next on Golic Golic. All right, welcome back. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr. with you guys. And now that I'm done gushing about portal quarterbacks in college, we can get to what I know Dad's been waiting to talk about all day here. Large excellence of the defensive variety. Because yesterday, it finally happened. We've been waiting down the whole backstretch of the season for Myles Garrett to get his moment. And it came with 5:16 left in the fourth quarter against the Cincinnati Bengals. One-on-one against Orlando Brown. Myles Garrett takes down Joe Burrow for his record-setting sack on the season, becomes the single-season record holder in the NFL for sacks in a season. Dad, I guess the biggest question on this one is 23 sacks this season, phenomenal accomplishment, what Myles did and how he did it. Did Joe Burrow take the dive? Because when everyone saw that play, there were shades of Brett Favre and Michael Strahan on a play that people still talk about right now. Do you think the comparison is warranted based on what you saw?
I don't think it was as bad as Brett Favre sliding in front of Michael Strahan. But listen, Myles Garrett, he's the best pass rusher in the game, and he's the quickest off the ball. His average time off the ball this year was 0.7, which was the fastest. On this play, You saw he got off before everybody. He got off the line in 0.23 seconds. 0.23. Unbelievable. And you see it right there. He was double teamed or chipped 43 or 42% of the time, highest rate in the NFL. 0.23 is absurd when you're already the best pass rusher. The tackle didn't stand a chance. Quite honestly, Burrow was going down. There was no doubt about it, the way that Garrett turned the corner. It certainly was not as bad as Brett Favre. Yeah.
No,
yeah.
I think to your point, Joe Burrow also, this is to me a lot of things that came together at once. I don't think he took a dive. If you look on that play, there was a tackle game going on the inside. So there was a looping D tackle that was going to come free and smack Joe Burrow in the mouth if he didn't get down on this play. Garrett had already beaten Orlando Brown around the edge. And so Joe Burrow in week 18 in a game that was not going to get them into the postseason probably said, hey, for who, for what? I'm going to live to see this offseason healthy and not rehabbing. But regardless of how much resistance Joe Burrow put up, Dan, I'm sure you appreciate this because your eyes, I'm sure, as someone that spent 9 years in the NFL playing on the defensive line, like we all watched the positions that we're most familiar with. And going into this game, like there was no other reason to watch this game besides seeing what was going to happen with Myles Garrett. And like from the other side, like I tried to block these guys in college, and you had great game plans for some star rushers to try and figure out how you were going to account for them. What an appreciation for what Myles Garrett is able to do from the neck up in maintaining that competitive intensity across 4 quarters, knowing you're going to get like 3 reps a game where you're actually one-on-one with somebody, where the stars align down and distance-wise, time on the clock-wise, score-wise, where they're going to feel like, hey, we have to just put people out in the routes and can't send a guy to chip, send a back over there, slide the line your way. And to be ready when that moment comes is like, again, no one's going to cry for Myles Garrett because he's making $40 million a year. Yeah. But that exercise in mental toughness is pretty, quite honestly, if Joe Burrow was going to take a dive, should have done it in the first half. Get Myles Garrett the sack he wants, and then go out there and get a comparatively, I think, less enthusiastic version of Myles, who's now got that done. They're not going to make the playoffs either. And that way you make the life of your offensive tackles a little bit easier for the second half of that game, Joe. Come on.
Oh, I'm telling you, Myles Garrett probably would have exited the game. He probably would have been done playing and not risking an injury. He was in there only to get the sack. And again, one of the other questions that comes up, it's now a 17-game schedule, not a 16-game schedule. It's kind of like in college ball where now stats from bowl games count along with regular season as well. So does that skew the record? And even Michael Strahan, who was tied with T.J. Watt for the old record, 22 and a half. And I agree. It was kind of tongue-in-cheek saying where Strahan says, I have the 16-game record. Myles has the 17-game record. But let me throw this caveat in there. Myles Garrett played the fewest amount of plays of T.J. Watt and Michael Strahan. Myles Garrett played 437 plays. Michael Strahan, 567 plays. T.J. Watt, 616 plays. And so a lot of that, especially the pass rushing, Cleveland was usually losing. So the opponent was normally running the ball in the second half. So he had less opportunity to get sacks on the quarterback. So I get when people talk about it's more games, but this overall was less plays than both Strahan and T.J. Watt.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Nothing is going to diminish how impressed I am by this. For all the reasons that you mentioned, like the degree of difficulty on this was set on all Madden. It was set on Hall of Fame, given all the different caveats that you just brought up there. So an incredible accomplishment, and one that we're excited to talk about with our next guest. Joe Thomas, the Hall of Fame offensive tackle, 10-time Pro Bowler, current analyst for the NFL Network, and here on behalf of Hall of Fame Beef, who just supplied the chuck roast that allowed me to cook a delightful pot roast over the weekend. So, Joe, thank you for that first and foremost. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, guys.
No, we appreciate it. And we were just gushing about Myles Garrett, a guy that you know very well in Cleveland for that accomplishment. And factoring in, Michael Strahan brought up the, added game in the season and all those different things. For you, how true and on the mountaintop is this record from Myles, understanding he did have the extra opportunity?
Yeah, I think there obviously has to be a little caveat when you're talking about the sack totals, because Reggie White, doing it back in the day when he only gets 12 games and Strahan only had 16, and now Myles gets 17. So I totally understand, how many bites at the apple that you get makes a big difference in how many sacks you're going to get or how many passing yards or touchdowns you're going to get throughout the course of a season. But I think when you get a chance to just watch what Myles Garrett had to deal with to get the record this season. I mean, 2 weeks ago against the Steelers basically said, we'd rather lose and not give Myles the sack record than allow him to sack Aaron Rodgers and give him that sack record. Not only was he getting double teamed, but basically the whole offensive game plan was surrounding how do we keep Myles Garrett from sacking our quarterback? And that's what he was dealing with for most of the season, where he hardly ever got singled. And when you're playing on a team that's losing, you don't get very many opportunities where the other team's quarterback is going to hang onto the football and give you opportunities to sack the quarterback. So I think when you consider the challenges that he faced on a losing team, and then how teams' offenses were entirely focused on shutting him down, including adding 2 and 3 blockers to him on every play, to me, it's the most amazing accomplishment among pass rushers, among defensive players in NFL history.
You mentioned Reggie White, and I should mention this. He was my teammate and still the greatest pass rusher I have ever seen and or played with. 1987, he had 21 sacks. 1987, for those that don't remember, we struck that year and missed 4 games. He had 21 sacks in 12 games. He would have had 4 more games. It would have been interesting to see what his sack total was if he played a full season, if we didn't have the strike. How about for the offensive lineman, in this case, Orlando Brown? When obviously you don't want to give up the sack, but not a lot you could do about it with the get-off Myles Garrett has. How tough is that for the individual offensive player?
Well, it's not a lot of fun, right? Because the whole league was focused on Myles the last couple of weeks, and we were all waiting to see when he was going to get that final sack to break the record. And so on offense, as a quarterback, Brett Favre, he kind of scooted into Michael Strahan and gave him the record, because it's a little feather in your cap when you're a Hall of Fame quarterback to be able to say, hey, that guy, was one of the greatest of all time. He sacked me to get his record. As an offensive lineman, not exactly the feather in your cap to be, I was the guy that gave up the record-breaking sack. So probably a tough day for him to wake up after, doing a pretty good job most of the game. Of course, I think Myles got the sack on, maybe the very first opportunity that Myles had one-on-one where the quarterback actually hung on to the football for more than a second. So it's not like he was able to shut out Myles until right at the end of the game and Myles just stole one from him. But look, Myles Garrett's the first defensive player that I've ever watched or played against. In his case, I played against him when he was a rookie, and now I'm able to watch the amazing things that he's doing every single weekend. And he's the first guy that I've watched, and I said, even at my best with a great game plan, I don't think I would have been able to block him consistently one-on-one. He's just that good. He's got that many moves. His get-off is that impressive. He's taking 2 steps before you're even taking 1 kick as a tackle. And so, for Orlando Brown, if it's any flowers or concession, like, hey, I don't care who you are. I don't think anybody could have blocked Myles. And so don't feel too bad about yourself this morning, because it wasn't you. It was just you're going against this superhuman dinosaur freak animal that nobody's ever seen out there on the edge before. And he's going to get that sack against no matter who he was going against.
Yeah, the Myles Garrett support group, whenever it meets, will have plenty of people joining that meeting, so Orlando doesn't need to feel too bad on that. You mentioned the struggles of the team. It ultimately culminated in the decision made today. The Browns decided to fire head coach Kevin Stefanski and retain GM Andrew Berry. Did you agree with that decision on both fronts?
Yeah, it was an interesting decision. Hearing the whispers and reading the tea leaves around Cleveland the last few weeks, it felt like there was a separation coming, and it was going to be kind of one of these, mutually parting ways where you've got the 2-time coach of the year, a guy who's done a really good job in a tough situation in several years. And, Cleveland's not been an easy place to win. It takes a team, gets their first playoff victory that they've had in a long, long time. And so there's still a lot of love from the Browns to Kevin Stefanski. But I think it was more of a changing of the direction that they wanted to head in, and maybe a good time for the franchise to reset, to start over at that head coaching position. I was surprised that they kept Andrew Berry, and he's had a great draft this season, but some of the drafts before this year were a little bit up and down. And I think there's still the remaining question out there that fans are asking, like, well, Kevin Stefanski kind of got fired because the situation the team was in this year was because of the Deshaun Watson trade that didn't work out, and the way the salary cap was hamstrung and the lack of draft picks that came from it. So who was the one that was responsible for that pick? And maybe that's the fall guy. So I think this is kind of a signal when you decide to keep Andrew Berry around and you fire your head coach that, Andrew Berry maybe didn't have a lot of say in that Deshaun Watson trade, and that he's not responsible, culpable for that decision, and that they liked the players that he's been picking and the roster that he's put together, especially with this last draft. But it is curious because, you never know who that head coach is going to be, and you never know how much say he wants in personnel. And if you say going into the process, hey, we want a head coach, but we definitely don't want to give him final say on the players that he gets to choose, well, you're going to eliminate some potential great head coaching candidates. And so I like Andrew Berry personally, and I think from a player evaluation and selection standpoint, he definitely hit a home run this year with their draft choices. But it's not to say that as they interview head coaches, maybe they make a decision down the line that, hey, this is a head coach that wants personnel say. And like Bill Parcells used to say, he wants to be able to buy the groceries and cook the dinner. Maybe that is something that is a decision that's pushed off until they do decide on a head coach. But I know for Browns fans, for me personally, like Kevin Stefanski is a very good coach, and I think he's going to land very quickly on his feet with another head coaching job within this league.
Completely agree. I think he will definitely be in the next rotation of hires for obviously a different place. Listen, we don't have to tell you the troubles the quarterback position has had with the Cleveland Browns. You know it all too well. So, and the reports are that the new coach will have a say in who the quarterback is next year. So Shedeur Sanders got 8 games. Dylan Gabriel played in 10 games. Did you see enough out of both of them to say we should stay with these two, or do you think they should draft and or bring in a veteran next year to compete or take over the team?
Well, I think when we saw Dylan Gabriel out there, you felt good about a third-round draft choice who's going to be a very solid backup, who's going to be ready when called upon, but not a guy who you want to lead your franchise long-term. Just not enough playmaking ability, not enough ability to throw the football down the field, in the middle of the field. A good athlete, certainly made a lot of plays with his legs in college, but not the Lamar Jackson type guy that is going to make a ton of plays in the NFL with his legs. And so he's got kind of a lower ceiling, and you feel really good about, hey, we got a third-round draft choice, and we made him a very solid backup quarterback for us, which is a very important position in the NFL. So I think you feel good about that, but he's not going to be your franchise guy. With Shedeur, you saw some great plays during his run there as the starting quarterback, and you saw some really bad plays, and you saw some nice improvement. There was a few games where you said, hey, man, here we go. Like, this is the guy that a lot of the people nationally thought he could be when they thought he would be a first-round draft choice. But then you would see regression. And so I'm not exactly sure where the franchise is, because Shedeur did not play very well in the last game of the season. They won the game in spite of him. The defense played amazing, pick 6, turnovers, was able to basically win the game for him on defense like they did a couple times throughout the season. And so I don't think there's anything going into this offseason that is going to make Cleveland say, hey, we can't take a quarterback in this draft if we really like him because we got Shedeur Sanders. I think they're in a situation where, as they evaluate these quarterbacks in the draft, maybe there's a guy they really love and they draft him, and then he becomes that guy they're trying to groom to be the franchise guy. But maybe they don't love one of these guys. And I think Shedeur has given you enough signs of hope and enough signs of potential that they would feel, hey, we would maybe sign a veteran, allow Shedeur to have a full season, a full offseason to be the starter, get a really, really good look at who he is and who he can be. And then depending on what happens next year, then decide, okay, we either love Shedeur and he's our guy, or maybe now we need to dip back into the draft and try to find somebody else. So the picture is still a little bit cloudy at that quarterback position, and I think it'll hinge on how they evaluate these rookie quarterbacks as you start getting to that draft evaluation season.
And before we get to that, going to have to figure out which head coach is going to be a part of those conversations with Andrew Berry going forward here. Fascinating stuff, as always, for the Browns. Always appreciate your time, Joe. Everyone, we also appreciate Hall of Fame beef. Check out Joe raising Japanese Wagyu, American Wagyu, and Angus on the family farm in Wisconsin, selling it direct to consumer. Go to hallofamebeef.com. I know that is where I got the beef that turned into. And Joe, I tagged you on the picture. Pot roast that I got a lot of compliments on. And so all of that, I was just a vessel for the great beef you guys provided, man. We appreciate it.
It's not your grandma's pot roast anymore. This is some elite stuff. We're talking Wagyu. And don't forget, January is Jerky January. I got to send you guys some of our amazing whole muscle jerky flavors that we do, because we got to all celebrate together. If you're not going to be in the playoffs like the Browns, at least you can celebrate Jerky January from the couch with a couple beers, enjoying the rest of the NFL, living out their dreams of playoffs and Super Bowls.
Hey, you know what? Truer words never spoken. If we're all going to be here, we might as well do it with jerky in hand. Joe, you're the best. We appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
Oh, man. All right, coming up next, while we stick around and go through Jerky January, we'll talk about a couple of other coaches that are going to get a chance to run it back with their teams next year here on Golic Golic. It's Golic Golic, Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr. Big one coming up tomorrow. Tommy Lloyd, the number 1 ranked Arizona Wildcats head basketball coach, going to stop by and talk to us about excellence there. Undefeated, spent a lot of time in Big 12 country, got to spend a lot of time in Tucson this year, and everything coming up Lloyd so far. Can't wait to talk to him 3:30 to 5:30 p.m. Eastern, as we are every day here on Golic and Golic. We talked earlier, a bunch of names that we know lost their jobs in the NFL today on the chopping block. And at some point, we can rank and talk about the best openings that are out there right now among the teams with vacancies. But we also got the announcements on the other side, Dad. A couple of organizations announcing they were going to bring their coaches back. Shane Steichen, Chris Ballard, the GM and coach for the Indianapolis Colts, both coming back. And Zach Taylor, the head coach for the Cincinnati Bengals, despite another season that ends with them outside of the playoffs in the midst of the prime of Joe Burrow's career. Any issue with this decision by Cincinnati, despite the struggles that we saw this season once again?
No, I mean, they just they need help personnel-wise on defense, right? They have the weapons on offense. The running game, picked up a bit, but that certainly is something that could get stronger. And listen, quite honestly, we know money's involved. Cincinnati doesn't like paying people that aren't there, so they fire Zach Taylor, have to keep paying him. We know they wouldn't like that. But no, I think it's a team that has the offensive firepower to compete, but defensively, they struggled. So, I mean, that's going to be on the personnel, the between the draft and free agency and trades that they bring in. So, sometimes you just kind of got to work through stuff. And obviously you work through an injury with Joe Burrow, which doesn't help. That's the one thing when you lose, when you put so much into a quarterback and you lose said quarterback for a long stretch of time, it's going to affect you negatively.
Certainly a struggle there. It seems like everyone's going to come back. Al Golden on defense. They saw some improvement despite being the side of the ball that we knew walked into the season with an arm tied behind their back. And Joe Burrow spoke pretty candidly after the game, talking about what needs to get done, said he'll offer his feedback as always for the organization, that they take his opinion seriously. But we know he's not out here playing GM. But every year you've got Joe Burrow playing the way that he did in the back half of the season when he was healthy, and you miss out on the postseason, especially this year in the way the AFC picture shook out without Mahomes and some of the usual suspect, no Lamar Jackson. It really feels like a massive opportunity lost for that team at that point in time. But I'm with you. Given some of those caveats, it's why, quite honestly, I'm not overly surprised that Indianapolis wants to run it back with Shane Steichen either. This was a team that felt like, hey, we'd found something here with Daniel Jones coming over from his time in New York by way of Minnesota, and then lose the final 7 games of their season after that injury. But I'm wondering, and I saw rumblings of this online, how much criticism you think he and Chris Ballard deserve for not starting Riley Leonard down the stretch of the season instead of Phillip Rivers. We saw that conversation. It was fun. It was nostalgic. And then Riley Leonard goes out there and throws for 270 yards and 2 touchdowns against the best defense in the NFL that had starters in there at the beginning of this game. Was seeing his performance something that, in your mind, undermined that decision from them in retrospect?
I think this was extenuating circumstances with Phillip Rivers. They still felt they were in it, and to put it all on a rookie quarterback who hadn't played and obviously wasn't a first-round franchise quarterback. We still will wait and see what Riley Leonard can be. He certainly showed well. But the extenuating circumstances, Mike, is Phillip Rivers, while 5 years removed from playing, knew this offense. There was no transition period. Work was Steichen with the Chargers. Was texting with Steichen every week while coaching his son's high school using the same playbook. So there was no transition at all. He knew this offense back and forth. So I think if that hadn't been the case, I don't think Phillip Rivers would have been back. By the way, Phillip Rivers says he thinks he can coach at the NFL level. We'll see. We'll see if that happens. But while that's not a question for Cincinnati, they have their quarterback. It's going to be interesting. Daniel Jones coming off an Achilles, started out great, then, slid back a little bit. Anthony Richardson, I don't think is going to be counted on. He may be in the mix for competition, but certainly not counted on. And Riley Leonard, I think, surprised some people and showed really, really well. So that quarterback situation in Indianapolis is really going to have an interesting twist to me. But no, I do not think Shane Steichen got downgraded or should have got downgraded for the extenuating circumstances of the relationship with Phillip Rivers.
I think it's fair to question the decision, though. Like, knowing now, maybe Riley didn't show them behind the scenes. He's a 6th-round draft pick, so we know that's not a ton of capital that goes into these decisions. But based on the way he played yesterday against the best defense in the NFL, if you could have gotten that performance more often, or even something close to that, it does help you evaluate it more for the future. And quite honestly, it unlocked the downfield passing attack portion of that offense with Alec Pierce that we know was a non-starter with Phillip Rivers there. So again, do I think it was totally the wrong decision? No, and I had fun with it like a lot of other people. But I think given what we saw yesterday, it's fair to question why they weren't more willing to give him the opportunities to do that maybe would have helped them going forward in a way that now they kind of still have to wonder about.
I think hindsight is 20/20 on that because they didn't have a gauge on what they thought he was going to do. And if they didn't bring in Phillip Rivers, who was the backup? Seth Hennigan. So you would have had Riley Leonard and Seth Hennigan. That was going to be your quarterback duo.
That's fine if you bring Phillip Rivers in, but if Riley was healthy and you didn't start him and this was something that you had seen an inkling of and didn't give a chance to grow in a season that was already pointing downhill, that's, I think, more what I'm talking about. You could have had Phil there as the backup, but to not give Riley more than that one start, I don't know, does look a little bit interesting. Maybe it is hindsight all coming to play here. We'll look ahead at what we've got coming up in the postseason, including which 1 seed we trust most to handle their business. Next on Golic and Golic. Hour number 2, New Year, same us. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr. here on Golic and Golic. And New Year and a new playoff bracket just dropped. We finished game 272. You and Ryan Radke on the call for Westwood 1 to finalize that final playoff spot. The 4 seed in the AFC as the winner of the AFC North. Steelers slot in there and now give us this, a glorious look at the bracket that we're going to take in to the playoffs coming up here. Your 1 seeds, the Seattle Seahawks in the NFC, the Denver Broncos in the AFC, and then these juicy wild card weekend matchups. Looking at it now, this is our first reaction to a lot of this, so I want to walk through it this way. First and foremost for you, looking at wild card weekend, you're going to be on the call for one of these games here, I believe the Bears and the Green Bay Packers. So maybe setting that one aside, what other game are you most interested in this opening slate?
Probably San Francisco at Philly. I still think the representative for the NFC is going to come out of the NFC West, which would mean San Francisco, Seattle, or the Rams. And Philly, no matter how they played this year, they're still the defending champs. They're in the playoffs, and they have a home game. So I'm really interested to see what San Francisco can do, especially defensively against Philly. Not a great pass rushing team in San Francisco. And that's one of the West Coast teams going to East Coast or dome team going to cold. But, Mike, it's not going to have an effect. Real quick, the Chargers play at the Patriots on Sunday night. The weather is supposed to be 42 and rain. A West Coast team going to the East Coast of New England, but 42 and rain, not a blizzard at all. Houston at Pittsburgh, you're looking at a dome team going to the cold weather area. That's Monday night. 41 and sunny is the weather report for Pittsburgh on Monday. And then San Francisco, another West Coast team, going to the supposed cold in Philly. Philly on Sunday, high of 51. So and Green Bay and Chicago, both cold weather teams, doesn't matter. Rams at Carolina, no weather issue. Buffalo at Jacksonville, no weather issue. So really no disadvantage for a warm weather team or a dome team going to a cold weather team. So, but back to it, San Francisco at Philly is really the matchup I'm looking at.
A brief bout of weatherman Mike Golic Sr. popping into the fray to say hello, looking at this slate of games. And you're right, that one fascinating in an NFC that feels like outside of the NFC West, there's not a lot of people they feel comfortable trusting. And even with the 49ers and all they've overcome this year, questions in critical areas, which is kind of what brings me then to the other side here. You see what Jalen Hurts, the team fresh off winning the Super Bowl, can muster for this group against the 49ers team that's always been the bridesmaid, but never the bride. But that's not the game I want to look at. The game I want to look at is Bills-Jags, Dad, because I've already seen it. This is the game that feels like, for our purposes, it's going to have the most narrative heft. You're looking at an AFC playoff run without Joe Burrow, without Patrick Mahomes, without Lamar Jackson. And so everyone's going to be staring at Josh Allen like, do the thing. Forgetting that his defense hadn't been able to stop anyone on the ground so far, and that always becomes our biggest concern heading into this time of year. On the other side, it's strength on strength. It's the sixth time since the merger that we're going to have the number one rush offense, that being the Buffalo Bills, against the number one rush defense, that being the Jacksonville Jaguars, and the first time since 2003. So I'm interested in this one because of who Liam Cohen has helped turn the Jags into in year one, but also how is Josh Allen going to be able to overcome some of the very clear deficiencies on this team to try and capitalize on what is a great opportunity?
Yeah, that is going to be a good one. No doubt about it. Also, you look at the Rams going to Carolina. The Rams are the biggest favorite in the first round. They're a 10.5-point favorite, according to FanDuel. And remember, Carolina beat the Rams in Carolina during the season. But I don't know how much hope I give for Carolina. But what do you think has the biggest potential for an upset in the first round?
An upset in the first round. Well, again, Carolina would be by the point spread an upset, and I think that's how we need to look at these things here. I would probably say, looking at this now, man, I mean, would Houston-Pittsburgh technically be an upset? Or are we going to go by seeding or by the point spread favorites here? I'm sure the Texans are favored in that game, right?
No, I would go by the point spread. Houston's a 3.5-point favorite in this game. So Houston's a favorite.
You know what? We can ask that question to Conor Orr because I don't have the lines in front of me right now, but we'll talk to him about that. Conor, all good as we get set to go on here. Conor, kind enough to join us here now. Again, senior NFL writer over at SI.com, co-host of the Monday Morning Quarterback podcast. Conor, we appreciate the time. So for you, let's start off with that. We just pulled up the bracket of the NFL playoffs that are set after yesterday. Let's start up top with the one seed, Seattle on one side and the Denver Broncos on the other side. Which of those two teams do you have more faith in to make their way to the Super Bowl as the top team in their conference?
I think it's probably Seattle, and I think it's twofold. The Seahawks have just amazed me at their ability to continually get back to their offense, even when they're knocked off course. And we've seen JSN taken out of certain portions of games, but never the entirety of games. And there's a resilience to that I think is really unbelievable. And really with Seattle, too, their ability to just do anything from nickel differentiates them, I think, from the rest of the teams in the playoffs. I just think that they're super versatile, and Sam Darnold can do just enough. I think he's that guy, and so I like them just a little bit more than Denver. And Denver, you got to look at, they got a defensive coordinator that's going to be interviewing for a bunch of head coaching jobs. I think that their situation might get a little haywire here as we get down the stretch. So we'll see what happens there for the Broncos.
You looked at the four seeds in both the AFC and the NFC. Pittsburgh and Carolina are hosting Houston and the Rams, and both are underdogs. Which home team do you think could have the possibility of pulling off an upset?
It's a great question. I suppose Pittsburgh, because there was a lot of conditions to that win over Baltimore. I mean, you need a cornerback to trip, you need a missed field goal, you need a lot to go your way. But you get DK Metcalf back. I think that this offense transforms just enough. And if you can play the game that Tomlin likes to play and just shrink the game down into these kind of minute moments, maybe you have a chance, because Houston isn't going to overpower you offensively. The Rams, I think, are going to come out here something fierce. And I think there was a reason why McVay finished the season that he wanted to finish it. And Carolina, that game was so up their alley against Tampa. It was a bad weather game. They could have gotten the ball rolling on the run, and they just didn't. And so I think this team's just in a little bit of a funk right now.
The Rams certainly could lay claim to this. I don't know if there's another answer. I feel like we have every year the dreaded team no one wants to play right now, given getting hot at the right time or the makeup of the roster. Is there a team maybe including or besides the Rams you'd put in that category?
I think certainly the Rams are number one here. And again, it's just because of what they're able to do and how versatile they are. Chicago at this point might be interesting to me, just with the way that they've run the ball and the way that they've kind of set up their offense. But again, that defense aren't world beaters. San Francisco, I would have said a couple weeks ago, but their loss to Seattle kind of put them out. Philadelphia is still struggling offensively, but I think that's the beauty of this playoff field, right? There is a pronounced fatal flaw in almost every single team, and even the best team, theoretically, the Rams, has finished the season poorly. And so I love the fact that we kind of don't really know anything as we kick off the playoffs.
Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if any team makes it to the playoffs. And I think for the most part, we like it that way. All right, so we have 6 openings as far as head coaches are concerned. 4 just happened, 2 happened during the season. Before we get into those, are there any more, do you think, that are on the horizon?
So I would say that the Ravens and John Harbaugh is certainly a conversation. I think that Mike Tomlin and a very lucrative Sean Payton gap year in television, I think, is still certainly a possibility. And I think we just have to wait and see how the GM situation resolves itself in Miami. Like right now, the Dolphins are interviewing a lot of GM candidates that would align with Mike McDaniel. That would lead me to believe that he's safe. And the lone kind of coin flips left would be Tampa, Baltimore, and Pittsburgh. But I think a lot of those I would anticipate maintaining status quo.
Of the jobs that are currently open right now, is there a clear answer for the best one available?
I think it's probably Atlanta, and it reminds me a lot of the Jacksonville job last year, where even the Jaguars, like throughout the Trent Baalke era, and even when Urban Meyer was there was always these players, and everyone would point to it and be like, wow, there's a lot of good players on this roster, but for some reason, they lack that ability to have a GM and a coach come in and kind of mortar that whole thing together and just put the glue together and make it make sense. I think that could happen in Atlanta. I don't know what people's taste is in terms of Michael Penix and what they think they'd be able to do there, but it's clearly a very winnable division. It's a good organization with a largely patient owner, even though Raheem Morris didn't get a lot of time there. But I think that's one that probably coaches are kind of circling there. And I think that a lot of coaches around the league like that Tennessee job. They think that could be a quick turnaround opportunity down there as well.
Any chance you think Bill Belichick will get back to the NFL?
I would be very surprised. I think Cleveland is certainly probably the biggest wild card potential there, because they gave up the best coach who might end up being candidate one for a lot of other teams. And so at that point, they just throw themselves into a world where you have no idea what they're doing. But I just think with everything that comes with Belichick at this point, and it's such an executive-focused league, and they have so much power now, given the current ownership class, I don't think anyone wants to cede any sort of power like that to Belichick. I'd be very, very surprised. And you're not getting Josh McDaniel out of New England, I think, and that's going to be a tough go for him as well.
Is Kevin Stefanski the happiest guy in the NFL coaching circle this morning?
Yeah, I mean, talk about falling upward, and I think he did as good as he possibly could in Cleveland, and I think we're probably only tapping the surface in terms of just the disaster that was the Deshaun Watson trade, how he had to truncate his offense, how hamstrung that made them from a picks and cap perspective, and the fact that they're saying that Andrew Berry keeps his job because of how good the draft picks are playing. Well, the draft picks were playing really well because you had a good coaching staff, right? And so I think Kevin Stefanski finally walks into sanity. He comes out the other side of the river, like in Shawshank Redemption, and gets his pick of these jobs. And like we said, there's a couple of really good opportunities there. I would say the Giants and the Titans are probably 1 and 2, maybe the Falcons too for Kevin Stefanski.
So, again, with 6 openings, and we agree, we talked about it earlier, we think Stefanski will be in this cycle and get rehired by another team. So for right now, the other 5 openings, who are some of the hot candidates out there?
It's interesting. I think that Mike McDaniel in Seattle has changed the complexion of this cycle, and in perfect timing, because there really aren't a lot of your name brand offensive coordinator candidates. And so if you want that hot young play caller, you might have to take a risk on someone like Grant Udinski or Declan Doyle, or guys that aren't calling plays right now, but are in good systems. And so that's why I think a lot of the weight and a lot of the attention are on guys like Jesse Minter and Jeff Hafley from Green Bay, Brian Flores from Minnesota, who I think fits a lot of these jobs. And you're looking at some of these candidates like that, maybe even Evero from Carolina, where do you have a defense, maybe, if you're not that hot young offensive play caller, that can at least slow down the Shanahans and McVays of the world? And that's where Seattle kind of made their hay at that last hire.
With that in mind, Brian Flores, we know there have been other forces at play at times in the conversation around his potential to become someone's next head coach. Do you think we're finally past that with that in mind then? Do you think that Brian Flores and the lawsuit are something that teams are now willing to overlook because of the lack of quality candidates, or because of the power, I should say, of his candidacy and how quality he is?
Well, I think this is a big candidacy for Brian, and like you said, it's at the right time. And I think the one thing that's probably working in his favor especially is the fact that there are 2 teams with openings in the Raiders and the Cardinals who are very familiar with Brian Flores, and I don't think would be bothered by the lawsuit at all. Brian Flores goes way back with Monty Ossenfort. There's some New England ties there, and he clearly has relationships with Tom Brady in New England, and I think that there might even be, a Patriot kind of reboot there in Las Vegas. Those teams, and especially the Raiders, I mean, talk about a team that has acclimated itself to active lawsuits against the NFL, I think would be very unbothered by the fact that Brian Flores is in the building. So
we see Tom Brady, a minority owner of Vegas, but maybe going to be in a decision-making situation. Troy Aikman brought into Miami to help with the GM search. Do we see this as a trend that former players, mostly quarterbacks, are going to possibly be brought into organizations? I know Tom paid his way in to be a minority owner, but other quarterbacks may be brought in?
I think so. We need to protect this wall between the broadcasters and the ownership booth. It's broken down now. The whole system is completely troubled. But I think that what's unique about Matt Ryan or Troy Aikman or Tom Brady is the access, right? I mean, because you're a television partner, you get to bump into these owners a lot, and you get to bump into these guys that are in their circles, and they're curious about who you come across in your travels that you like, and who do you hear about and you hear good things about. And they just have an ability to bend the ear of an owner that other normal people in the NFL don't. And I think when it comes time to make crunch decisions, you end up leaning on that because, and it makes sense to some degree, right? I mean, Troy Aikman is in a lot of meetings. He's in a lot of facilities. Tom Brady is too, like it or not. Matt Ryan, same thing. And especially with Brady and Ryan, having that modern understanding of what a quarterback needs, I do think is valuable. And this probably should have been happening years ago. Now, you could say, is it fair? Is it not fair because of the access that they have? But until the NFL legislates this, I think it's a smart move on behalf of ownership.
The NFL and their owners have never really cared about what's fair. It's what helps them win until, like you said, that slap on the wrist is enough for them to pull the arm away here. Conor, always appreciate the insight, man. Thanks so much, and enjoy Wildcard Weekend coming up, man. Should be a good one.
All right, thanks, guys. You too.
Thanks, Conor.
Awesome. Thanks, Conor. With Miami in mind, by the way, courtesy of Cameron Wolfe, Mike McDaniel told reporters My understanding is I'm the head coach of the Miami Dolphins until told otherwise. McDaniel confirms he'll be a part of the Dolphins GM process, but it won't be his decision. That will ultimately be in the hands of owner Stephen Ross. So we kind of saw this in the middle of the season, right? Got the vote of confidence. That's usually the axe sharpening to chop off the head. And then some stuff that showed a little bit of promise. You saw, I think, better performance towards the end of the year from Quinn Ewers after they benched Tua. So you wonder if that was truly enough, combined with maybe the lack of compelling options in their unique situation at quarterback, to say, hey, if we're going to move on from Tua, we need someone stable here that we also won't have to pay a bunch of money to go away.
Yeah, I mean, listen, organizations, that's why the firings happen right away. I mean, you've had a whole season to figure out what you were going to do. Anybody who waits at this point, what's the waiting period now for? What are you deciding in the next couple of days or week that you're going to say, oh yeah, we're going to part ways with this coach? I don't see that at all. So it does seem like he is going to be back, and the big question is going to be, we've got a couple of big money quarterbacks out there that could be done with their teams. Tua in Miami, Kyler Murray in Arizona. So it does. I think the focus has shifted in Miami now to not Tua and Mike McDaniel, but just Mike McDaniel there, and who is the quarterback going to be?
Yeah, McDaniel's seat was scorching hot going into the season. If you didn't figure it out in the midst of all that, that would be another indictment of the process there more than anything else. You mentioned Kyler Murray and Tua, maybe a little wife swap action there. Just flop one for the other and see how they exist in a new environment. And everybody maybe wins. Maybe results may vary on that. Coming up next, speaking of winners, let's head to Detroit basketball for what could be an Eastern Conference Finals preview coming up tonight. Next here on Golic and Golic. GG's with an NBA palate cleanser for you guys last night. Some buzzer beater action. Devin Booker, a go-ahead three with 0.7 seconds left, took the late inbounds pass, drills it over Alex Caruso, shaking a season-long slump from range. Jordan Goodwin, big night, 26 points off a career-high 8 3-pointers as the Suns upend the Oklahoma City Thunder 108-105. Cade Cunningham, meanwhile, red hot on the road, 27 points as the Detroit Pistons hold it down and get a win against the Cleveland Cavaliers 114-110. Detroit was down 2 starters, snapped a 9-game losing streak at Rocket Arena and beat the Cavaliers for just the second time in their last 15 games as they now get set to try and continue to push and hold on to that 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., sorry to bring up the Cavs loss, Dad. Didn't mean to do that to you, but
whatever.
Listen, can't feel bad about losing to the 1 seed in the Eastern Conference right now, the way the Pistons are playing, right?
Yeah. Pistons are playing well. Big matchup with the Knicks tonight. I mean, is this going to be like an Eastern Conference, final showdown? Hopefully not, if my Cavs have anything to say about it. But, they're both playing some good ball. And the difference with the Knicks, when Tom Thibodeau, when they let him go, what was the knock on him? That he wore his starters down, did not hit the bench a lot, and just the guys were dead by the end of the year. Mike Brown, somewhat the opposite. He does rely on the bench and the reserve, so much so while Jalen Brunson's minutes are the same basically this year, the other 4 starters are down anywhere from 3 to 7 minutes a game. So that has a cumulative effect over a long season of not, having your legs worn out. So Mike Brown really kind of going the oppo of Thibodeau.
Yeah, it's given way to Tyler Golic, which is a guy most often confused with Golic when it's heard on the broadcast in a way that makes me turn my head around a little bit. But along with Timothy Chalamet doing a lot for white boys in that building. So shout out to them. But no, you're right. That is the hope, is what's gone on there can continue to do it. And what they've got to go up against tonight is what's looked like on any given day one of the best, if not the best, defenses in the NBA. And so you combine that, it's been a steady formula, right? In the years that Detroit has been good, it's been dominance like we've seen from Cade Cunningham, who's a legitimate MVP candidate now halfway through the season, and then defense that's stingy enough to overcome the fact that from the outside, they're not always the most consistent shooting outfit, which pairs well with a matchup against the Knicks that we know is always going to be still at its core about toughness anyway.
Yeah, the definite toughness is a common thread a little different than the toughness, back in the day when the toughness was, giving a guy a bloody mouth as he drove the lane. So that's certainly not kind of the way it goes anymore. But the defense is fantastic. And what will be interesting at the trade deadline, the Pistons control their next 7 first-round picks. So those are all assets to possibly use if they want to go out and make a big trade. So that's something to keep an eye on as well.
Yeah, I think you're right. As we kind of look at the state of the Eastern Conference, you see down here Celtics quietly, like what they've done. Jaylen Brown lately, a 50-point outing the other night, in spite of the loss of Jason Tatum at the beginning of this season, has been noteworthy there. The Cavs, like you mentioned, Donovan Mitchell, I think was 4th in the league in scoring, at least going into this weekend. Like, there are some interesting contenders, but with what the Pistons have done to start this season, giving themselves a great base to build off of, and that opportunity at the deadline, I'm going to be fascinated to see how aggressive they're willing to be, because so much of the success has come with leaving this group together, allowing them to get a lot of time under task, and then carrying over the gains of that into this season.
Yeah, and I'm looking to see what the 76ers, if they could actually pull it together with Maxey Embiid, Paul George, Edgecombe, the rookie, what he's doing as well. Can they actually, get a groove on going and make a move?
Let me tell you what, Edgecombe, when he's humming, that's been a really fun, impressive, springy athlete to watch early in his NBA career. NBA fans, NHL fans, if you want to watch great stuff here, we hope you can do it live, but if you got to miss a game, you can catch up on game replays on the FanDuel Sports Network app. As soon as the final whistle blows, you can watch every highlight, every big moment in your choice of a 5, 10, or 15-minute condensed game. Just download the FanDuel Sports Network app today and make sure you are ready to go so you don't have to miss a thing around here. Coming up next, we don't want to miss a thing. The portal is fast and furious right now. We'll recap some of the biggest moves of the day for you and tell you how much better your team just got here on Golic and Golic. Welcome back to Golic and Golic. Hoping to talk to Ralph D. Russo from The Athletic here shortly about the ever-changing world of college football. I saw one of the graphics that I think is going to be a common refrain in the conversation about what's going on here. We mentioned before, Brendan Sorsby, one of the most sought-after portal prizes, the former quarterback of Cincinnati, committing to Texas Tech, where we know Texas Tech upped their commitment to football in a big way in dollars and cents. And the deal, we hear reports now, the NIL valuation stuff, it's so hard because in college, there's really not a concrete method for this the way there is in a capped league like the NFL pro leagues where this has been the case. But the reporting is that he is set to make potentially about $5 million this year. And people positioned that versus the entirety of Shedeur Sanders' rookie contract that will pay him about just over $4 million. So it's a different day and age, and we know the value of that position around the sport makes these conversations really interesting. For more on that, we've got Ralph with us now. Let's bring him in here. Check out his work over at The Athletic. A phenomenal job, as always, and a fantastic camera. We get to see him on here today. Ralph, good to see you, man. How you doing?
Happy New Year, guys. Thanks for having me.
Glad you're with us.
Happy New Year. So have you adjusted to this new reality of the dollar figures that we're seeing bantered about for some of these quarterbacks and even some of the high-end position players around the sport?
You have to. I would argue, we're still in an evolutionary period here. In fact, listen, as two guys who played in the NFL, at least, rather briefly for one and a long time for another, no slight, much better than I did, Golic Jr. But think about it from this perspective. As much as this money is getting pretty wild, right? I mean, you're getting to the point now where you might be better off getting starting quarterback power for money than you would be getting third or fourth or fifth round, like as high as third round draft pick money. Like that's pretty substantial. And, again, it's a new reality here that we're getting used to. I would also pose this, though, as guys who have lived through professional sports leagues where they have actual free agency. How much would Brendan Sorsby be getting if there were maybe 5 to 6 to 8 fewer P4 caliber quarterbacks on the market? I think we think of every year being a free agent as a good thing for some of these players, and they have short careers. So I think I think you can make an argument that is the case. But I think if you had more normal free agency to up the demand, because I think right now there's enough supply to keep the demand down. I think if you parsed out free agency a little better in college football, you could see the salaries, NIL, go up even more, guys.
It's just so odd hearing quarterbacks or players re-signing with their team. Trinidad Chambliss, the latest one that says,
Very weird.
I'm going to re-sign if I get my waiver that I can play another year. What does this do for the high school recruit quarterback? I mean, does any school, now I know Notre Dame is doing it. They're bringing up C.J. Carr after going 2 years in a row in the portal. But does anybody develop a quarterback anymore?
That's a great question, and I think it is one that I find a little problematic. Now, you can talk about high school recruiting in general, right? If you can get a quarterback or any player in the portal, are you better off doing that than, going to get, developing a high school player? Are you better off if you're a Power 4 squad just dipping into James Madison's roster, quite frankly, or Tulane's roster, or a good Conference USA team's roster, as opposed to developing some of your own players? But quarterback is especially interesting. I mean, you look at where Oregon is, right? If Dante Moore doesn't come back next year, I don't think Oregon's roster is built to replace him with what's on the roster. Meanwhile, they're I sort of losing out. Maybe they're not losing out. Maybe this is a good sign that Dante Moore is coming back. The fact that Oregon hasn't grabbed one of these other players. But I think your point is great. Even if you feel like, well, I got a 5-star here, he's high upside, I still have to develop that 5-star. So maybe the kid who is more of a Will Howard type, like we had with Ohio State last year, is a safer bet to get me to a long playoff run because he's more experienced than the 5-star who I have to develop a little more, who has a higher ceiling in the long run.
Yeah, it's certainly not all that dissimilar from the NFL decision of, hey, do I try and hit on a rookie quarterback? Do I go in free agency for a more proven commodity? Just happening with younger and younger players as it goes. Of the guys we've seen move so far, is there a name or a fit that you think could bear the most fruit and have the biggest impact this upcoming fall you're excited to watch?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to talk about Josh Hoover from going from TCU to Indiana. And that's really more of an Indiana thing now, right? Like, we just assume any quarterback who plays with Cignetti and in that system is going to thrive. Fernando Mendoza is the highest level version of this. Like, he is a talented guy who is going to go to the NFL. But if you hear Cignetti, he will always say, when he talks about how they evaluate quarterbacks, almost always will bring this up. Every quarterback we've had wins Conference Player of the Year. So whether it's at Elon or JMU FCS, JMU FBS, wherever he has been, that quarterback has sort of maxed out at his level. Even Curtis Rourke last year, now, that was a young man who had an injury history, but he played phenomenally last season, for his physical limitations. So now that I've seen what he's done with Mendoza, who has the physical skills of a number 1 draft pick, boy, like, why would you not want to play for Indiana right now if you're a quarterback? And that still sounds a little mind-blowing to say.
It really does. I mean, it's so hard to accept, yet here they are, the most complete team in all of college football. It is a definite feather in a cap for Cignetti. I mean, what a job he has done. How about some of the quarterbacks?
Can I throw just one more at you guys? Because I know you're a Notre Dame show to a certain degree. Kenny Minchey going to Nebraska is also one that's really fascinating to me. We heard so many good things coming out of that competition with C.J. Carr. It was really close. And Nebraska really does desire to have someone who can move around after the Dylan Raiola experience. No offense to Dylan, but he was not a guy who moved around very well. I think he made some progress there. I think we're all interested to see where he lands. But Minchey giving that offense a little different dynamic, playing with Holgerson. I'm interested to find out just how much was he just being hyped up by Notre Dame. Hey, this guy's great. He almost beat out our 5-star. Or what exactly does the hype around him from last spring match the actual production when he gets a chance to play at Nebraska?
Yeah, obviously we wish him the best without question. But so other quarterback, I know Sam Levitt, I think, was connected with Kentucky, but hasn't signed anywhere yet. Dylan Raiola, you mentioned. DJ Lagway. Where are possible landing spots for these guys?
Lagway was in Florida State, was in Tallahassee, I think either today or yesterday, depending on when those pictures were posted, compared to when they were taken. And so that would be an interesting mix of him, staying in the state and maybe going to play for Gus Malzahn at a critical time for Florida State. I mean, you're talking about a player, that's a tenuous coaching staff right there with Mike Norvell, barely held on this year thanks to a huge buyout. Whether he can be the high ceiling guy for Florida State or wherever his next stop is really interesting. Levitt, Kentucky, which is a real sign of respect for Will Stein, the offensive coordinator at Oregon, who's now going to become the head coach at Kentucky, that they would be in on maybe, I think you can make an argument, possibly the best quarterback in the portal. But now that LSU, they're not going to get Trinidad Chambliss, whether he's eligible or not. They're not going to get Trinidad Chambliss. He will not be following Lane to LSU. The other quarterback that was at Ole Miss, Austin Simmons, has been reportedly pegged for Missouri. So Lane's not getting that guy. Lane does need to get somebody, and Sam Levitt would be a nice addition down there. Again, it'll be interesting to see if your choice is LSU at Kentucky. Obviously, money plays a part of it, but you'd think that you'd end up at LSU with Lane Kiffin as opposed to going to try to be the guy who turns around Kentucky.
Yeah, I mean, the last guy that was a combo of Kenny Dillingham and Will Stein turned out all right in one Bo Nix, who got the touch from both of them while he was at Oregon. So fascinating the way those guys continue to overlap. We mentioned LSU and Ole Miss a fair amount. A lot of the reporting this week, I heard Pete Goling, the latest, saying he's not really sure which of his assistants are going to be there as they get set to play in the college football semifinal. How should this shake out, and how do you expect it to shake out with some of these guys involved?
So it sounds like in some of the reporting that's come about, we can expect the most important person to be there, which is Charlie Weiss Jr., the play caller. He will be there calling plays. This is no disrespect to any other assistant coach. These staffs have gotten very big. There was a time when your analysts couldn't coach hands-on with the players or be on the field and things along those lines. Now every big program has a wide receivers coach and an assistant wide receivers coach and a running backs coach and an assistant running backs coach. Maybe their title is analyst or something along those lines. So again, not to slight any of the other coaches, the main guy is going to be there. That's Charlie Weiss. I believe running backs coach Kevin Smith is planning on being there, but a couple of the others, tight ends coach and maybe another wide receivers coach, won't be there. Those guys will be back. But, and again, this is not perfect. You want all your coaches there. You want to be running at optimum efficiency. So that's not great. And it sort of speaks to why Lane Kiffin was not asked to coach out this whole bowl season. And Ole Miss said, no. If you want to go be LSU's coach, you go be LSU's coach. But I think Ole Miss, as far as the game structure, as long as Weiss is there calling plays, I think they should have enough bodies to orchestrate the rest of game day operations.
Yeah, certainly they've been in the eye of the storm for a while. Didn't blink against Georgia, and will have another equally difficult challenge coming up against the Hurricanes here soon. Speaking of the storm, Ralph, appreciate the time, man. Enjoy the little bit of lull in the action. I guess not really much of a lull at the portal now until we get to the games later this week. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much, guys. Anytime.
Thanks, Ralph.
Awesome. All right, coming up next, let's play a little 4 downs and look ahead to some of the juicy, enticing playoff matchups we have in the NFL here on Golic Golic. Welcome back to Golic Golic. As we wrap up the day, it was a busy weekend with all the hirings and firings. Well, I shouldn't say hirings yet. firings and people deciding to say hold instead of folding their hands. In the NFL, the NFL postseason roster getting set. We still got plenty of stuff to get to. So before we get to fourth and Golic, let's put our hands in the dirt and run through 4 downs here and ask some of the burning questions that we have coming off this weekend. I want to start with first down, Dad, as we look at what we saw this last weekend. The Philadelphia Eagles decided to wave the white flag early. They sent out their twos. Tanner McKee and company couldn't quite hold off the Washington Commanders. Did Philadelphia make a mistake by resting their starters, Dad? Still had a chance to potentially lock up the 2 seed, could have given them multiple home games and certainly a different matchup in this first round. Did you agree with this?
Listen. It's one of those things. It's like when the bye week hits, and if it's your bye week, you make an excuse on why it's good that you hit the bye week, right? Whether it's week 5 or week 13, the first bye week or the last bye week, you'll find a reason that it works. And it's the same thing for week 18. Whether you play your starters or you rest your starters, you make it work for your team. You give your reasons for that. You get your team to buy in, even though some players maybe are playing for incentives would want to play. But no, I do not think if the thought process is I don't want to get anybody hurt before, because that's the downside is you play it to win it. You get somebody hurt and they're not in the playoffs. You lose a main cog for the playoffs, which doesn't do you any good. So I am of the firm belief that week 18 is I almost don't count it for anything unless you're playing for a bye, you're playing for home field advantage, but they already were going to get home field advantage unless you're playing for win or go home like last night, Pittsburgh and Baltimore.
Well, because Chicago lost, they could have gone up to the 2 seed, which potentially could have gotten you another home game throughout this process. But I look at it when you combine it with that, and when also, the notion of, hey, the 49ers or the Green Bay Packers in terms of first round opponents, to me, both have their challenges. So I don't think it's markedly different there. I think you're right on the injury front. This Philadelphia team season has been up and down in part because of injuries to key players. We've seen Jalen Carter deal with shoulder injuries. You had a beat up edge that forced Brandon Graham out of retirement, had them active with Jalen Phillips at the deadline. The offensive line's been beat up through this season. So I think if you're Philly, you have the battle-tested mettle and belief from going through and winning it last year to say, we can take any road. We want to get our guys healthy there Sunday. Let's get to second down, speaking to the team that gave them that opportunity. The Chicago Bears did want to try and lock up that seeding, went out there and put their best foot forward against the Detroit Lions, Ben Johnson's old boo, and got upended in a game where they were once again struggling to score. Chicago came out flat and entered the fourth quarter down 16-0 before tying it and then ultimately losing at the buzzer. Have the last couple offensive performances from the Bears given you reason to be concerned about this postseason run?
No, listen, I called the game against the 49ers a week before where the offense put up 31. The defense scored on a pick 6, but the offense put up 31. Now the 49ers defense aren't the world beaters that they are when they're healthy, and again, week 18, you have the 2 or 3 seed wrapped up. I think it's human nature to take your foot off the gas a little bit. So really, there's not a lot in week 18 where I look at it the next week and go, oh, like I'm calling Green Bay at Chicago this week, and I certainly will not be bringing up on air, at least in my opinion, boy, the way they looked in week 18, is that going to carry over? I do not worry about week 18.
But I tell you who was, Ben Johnson, not thrilled about what went on in this game. And listen, but I understand. I guess I'm just saying, to me, what this reminded me of is this Chicago team, if they're not turning the ball over at a high clip, has a defense that's going to really struggle and has an offense that can certainly be potent. And we've seen Luther Burden come along really well as of late. Caleb Williams almost became the first Bears quarterback to throw for 4,000 yards. There's a lot there, but this is still a team to me that's pretty game script dependent going into the postseason in a way that worries me about their high end potential the way it always has.
Oh, I agree completely with that. And I would have said that whether they lost this game to Detroit or beat them, that they're depending on turnovers on defense, and offensively, you get the miracle play from Caleb Williams every now and then, and they have a really good running game. That's been their MO all year, and Ben Johnson rarely smiles anyway.
No, certainly. Had to be a tough one going out there and losing to the Detroit Lions for all the issues that they had this year, them being eliminated from the playoffs, to be able to get that one against the guy that just left. I'm sure it was on good terms, but we know everyone wants to look good in front of their ex. Let's go to third down here. Travis Kelce and the Kansas City Chiefs have the number 9 overall pick in the NFL draft, by the way, and that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about Tom Brady. I went ahead one down. Tom Brady, Dad, we heard reports, going to be assisting John Spytek, the GM who did retain his job after Pete Carroll was fired, in picking the new head coach. How much do you trust Tom? We talked about this earlier, the sea of former quarterbacks lending their voices and opinions to these process here. Should the Raiders be putting a lot of this in Tom Brady's hands?
Hell yes. Yes. The dude has not been long out of the league. He's one of the smartest, hardest working players to play. So you don't think he's going to do his due diligence and put his time in on this? The year between football and broadcasting, he would go and do practice games and put the work in and to try and develop. I mean, he's always going to be a 6th rounder, right? He's going to go down as the GOAT, but he started out as a 6th rounder who had to bust his hump to get on, got on the field with an injury, but he ended up staying on the field and becoming the GOAT. The dude works. So yeah, I would definitely listen to his input.
Yeah, his input's one thing. I think they brought him there for the relationships, and we didn't really see that manifest in a meaningful way last year in the way they were all hoping for. We talked earlier with Conor Orr. Brian Flores is kind of the one that people have circled. Can you take that and that relationship with him? I heard the prospect of Brian Flores and Brian Daboll as the offensive coordinator. Both guys with ties to New England. Daboll with plenty of ties, wanted to bring Brady down to Miami when he was the head coach there. So if you could secure that, then this feels even more like you're getting the benefits you hope for with Tom Brady. Let's click on over to fourth down, that one I was talking about before elsewhere in the AFC West. Travis Kelce, the Kansas City Chiefs, lost on the road to finish the season to those Las Vegas Raiders. Kelce and company do have the 9th overall pick in the draft because they were BAD bad this year. But Kelce still performed at a pretty high level, all things considered. Do you think this is the end for Travis of his storied career, knowing this was also the final year of his contract with the Chiefs?
That's what's going to be interesting. If he in fact does want to play again, what the deal would be with the Chiefs. Would he do a short team-friendly deal to make sure he finishes his career with the Chiefs, or would he look elsewhere? I would think he would stay with the Chiefs. And most players want to go out on their own terms, but the majority of players don't, i.e. see me. I'm the norm. You get told when you're done. He pretty much will get to decide when he's done. And most great players don't want to go out this way. Now, he played well, but the team did not what he's used to. So wouldn't shock me if he wants to end it better from a team aspect. But, we'll find out on New Heights and nowhere else but New Heights, the podcast with his brother Jason.
Well, and I mean, his brother Jason, who's been asked about this a ton and kind of offered up the usual advice of taking some time after the season, is an interesting resource. Most people don't have a family member, let alone a brother, who went through this exact same decision in this same era in similar circumstances with a team that was always flirting around the Super Bowl and going to potentially give him those opportunities. Travis this season overall, 4th among tight ends in receiving yards, 6th in receptions, 3rd in yards after the catch. So a nice bounce back after what had been a down year last season, even with some uncharacteristic drops popping up. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't see him playing in another uniform, so this could very well be the end. And if it is, what an incredible career for one of the greatest tight ends of all time. Let's finish up the show with 4th and Golic. A couple quick stories that we had fun with, and we think you will too. The Steelers had a little help from the man upstairs. Dad, did you see the shots before the game, or did you see him before the game? The priest out there blessing the field at Acrisure with holy water.
No, that was well before I was down on the field before the game. I did not see that. But, hey, listen, never turn down a blessing, right? You could use all the help you can get.
Yeah, no, the power of Christ compels you, and in this case, it compelled Tyler Loop to miss that kick. So sometimes forces at play bigger than the ones you're dealing with. But I want to get to this. So Trevor Lawrence and the Jacksonville Jaguars have a big game coming up with the Buffalo Bills. Trevor Lawrence has been a sensation this year, one of his best seasons, thanks to Liam Cohen and what he's done. So much so that it gave way to this scene in the post-game locker room. Jerry and Jones, the cornerback for the Jags, wanted to show Trevor some love based on what he had done for this team. There had been a viral meme, an AI picture of Trevor Lawrence with a full front grill in his mouth. And so they got him an actual grill, and Trevor put it in front of the locker room after the game. This dad has shades of Kirk Cousins rocking the chains on the team plane, coming back in the day, taking the whitest guy you know and giving him a bunch of ice to try and go and make him replicate an internet meme. This was awesome.
That's very cool team stuff right there. That is pure locker room stuff right there. But I gotta ask, is a grill comfortable? I don't know why I'm asking you. It's not like you've had a grill in, but I'm just wondering, are they comfortable? Obviously they're for show, but are they? Oh, jeez.
I mean, you should be the one telling me. Look at your grill. Also, it looks like you have 3 teeth in the front there.
Man, that is a scary looking picture. But I really wonder, like I said, obviously it's for show, but is it comfortable? Can you eat with them in?
I mean, listen, plenty of guys play with them in. Like, I'm pretty sure Lamar Jackson's played with a full grill on top and bottom for a bunch of this season. I see plenty of guys do that. So if someone out there can get us in touch with Paul Wall or his people, we'll see if we can, in fact, rob the jewelry store and tell him to make my dad a grill and see if we can make this picture a reality here on air. Maybe that's coming up tomorrow right here on Golic and Golic.
Wow.
Thanks for watching. For more Golic and Golic clips, make sure you subscribe to the FanDuel Sports Network YouTube channel.